Hey there, my friends. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good time and a good day and that everything is working out in your favor. Good to be with you once again. Thanks for joining me. Your loyal friend, once again, Marvin. I trust that you are also quickly learning to be a loyal friend of mine. Thank you for your support, through your subscription, by subscribing. I really, really appreciate those of you that have subscribed so far. And if you've not subscribed yet, please do think of subscribing and becoming a friend of ours so we can continue educating each other, improving each other, and through these meaningful conversations which are intended for the good of all mankind, for the good of all of us. The purpose of these conversations, sometimes they get into debates, but the purpose of all these things is to be able to come to a better place in as far as us as humanity are concerned. All right, so do like as well. Like the videos and share them far and wide, sharing the knowledge and sharing opinions. I do get inspiration from the comments that you give, so please do go ahead and continue to send in those comments, helpful comments, hopefully, even though I do take comments of criticism as long as they are done in a helpful way and in a respectable manner. All right, so today I want to zero in on religion. And obviously at some point that's going to become a talk about Christianity. Is religion helping people? Maybe that's not the right way to confront this subject. Maybe the question should be, how helpful is religion? Because I'm trying to pick my words here, because I'm trying to stay away from just being negative about the whole subject of religion. I don't want it to just sound like I'm just bashing it and just being negative about it. So maybe the right way to ask the question might be, how helpful is religion? All right. Now, I'm going to show you a clip of somebody that I respect, who is an authority in religious circles or in religion or things to do with religion, particularly Christianity. And he had a conversation with Joshua Mapongo. We know Joshua Mapongo is a hardliner. He says quite a lot of good things. People don't listen to him because they think he's a hardliner, and some people don't like him because he's a traditionalist. And for many Christians or religious people, people like that seem to be evil in a sense, evil in a sense, because that's what Christianity does. It makes us look at other people who have different opinions or who are radical in their different opinions as being evil or even demonic to a certain extent. But so Dr. Joshua Mapongo is a man that I like for the truth that he speaks. I may not agree with everything that he says, but quite a lot of things that he said are very, very helpful for our societies and community and even all of mankind. And I like the fact that he's a Pan-Africanist. But he had a conversation with Reverend Walter Mwambazi, and Reverend Walter Mwambazi is a spiritual figure, authority in the country of Zambia. Those of you that might not know him, he's a church leader, church pastor, I believe, up until this time. And so he's done quite a great work. He's a very, very positive impact, a personal developer, an entrepreneur. He does quite a number of things, quite a number of good things, I must say. Really, really wonderful things. He's a wonderful man, a man with a wonderful spirit, vibrant, very, very, I was going to say infectious, but I'm looking for the right word. I guess infectious works. Very infectious. He affects you in very positive ways. He's wonderful company to have around you. In other words, I've had encounters with him, but it's been many, many, many years. And I'm many years back, so he might not even remember me. But I love the way that he handles things, his approach to life. I love all of that. I love the conversation and debate that he had with Joshua Mapongo, and I want you to listen to just a small part of it. I believe you can find the rest of it on I think even platforms such as Facebook, social media, YouTube, and so on, to hear the full interview and debate. But I picked out some things that for me kind of agree with some assessments and conclusions that I'm coming to at this stage of my life, where I'm thinking about where do we go as Africa. And in fact, one of the interesting things that happened here is I simply ran into this video when I was just looking for things to as research materials, and I ran across this video, and I'm like, this is really interesting because he's agreeing with so much of what I'm beginning to say. But somebody had brought him to my attention about 3 months ago when I did a video and I was talking about poverty in Africa and all of that, and somebody made a comment and said, this is exactly what Reverend Walter Mambazi says in his book. So I've not seen his book yet. It's a book that I'll look forward to reading because of the fact that somebody said I was saying things that he was saying equally. So I found confirmation there, and it's good. It's a good thing when you find people like that who are confirming what you're saying, because then you know you're moving in the right direction. It's always safe that way. So I'm looking forward to seeing that book, and I'll be glad to market it on my platform once I see it and see that it's a good book. Already I'm talking about it right now, so because obviously it must be good material, and I believe that it's a book that I can also learn 1 or 2 things from. But take a look at this clip where he had a conversation with Joshua Maponga, actually. I'm always tending to say Mapongo. Joshua Maponga of Zimbabwe, and I'll come back and I'll give you what my take is, my views are with regarding to this debate that we need to have. It's a conversation that we must have now. It's a conversation that we need to have. But take a look and I'll come back in a bit. Enjoy it.
Already discussing the government structures and everything else, that we were never given political governments, but we were given kings. There's even a verse in the Bible, in the book of Acts, if I'm not mistaken. I may find it, you can Google it up for me. It is God who has given us these kings, and that we should honor them and respect them because it is God who has appointed them. So when Africans dishonor their own kings, are they still calling themselves Christians? Because the Christian book, which they call the Bible, acknowledges that they should recognize and honor their kings. So I would love my Honorable Reverend Walter to, since it's a rebuttal, to regroup on that. How do you prepare people for the kingdom of heaven while you are making them dishonor their kings on earth? And number 2, when you notice that an apple is rotten and you're biting it on every side, and every time you bite it, more worms are coming out, and more worms are coming out. How many more bites do you need before you discover that this apple called Jesus is a Eurocentric construct, that it is a rotten apple, that the African is being told there's a good side of it? Because if the political system and the colonial system were evil, the question is, was the economics righteous? Was the culture of the European righteous? Was the religion of the European righteous? And if colonialism was evil, is their religion pure? And if you can answer that for me, I think we'll have a place to start. Because on the issue of demonic, quote unquote, though it's not homogeneous, on the issue of evil on both sides of the path, we can agree on that. And I think we're here to look for that middle path, where we take the good of what Eurocentric religion is bringing into space, and the good of what Afrocentric spirituality is bringing to the course, and we have that middle ground. And my last question on the rebut is, what do we do as Africans to deal with the cultures which are written in the Bible, but Eurocentric religion condemns them? Point of reference, circumcision. Point of reference, lobola. Point of reference, usage of herbs and traditional herbs. Point of reference, land ownership and redistribution. Point of reference, sleeping and marrying our brothers' wives when our brothers have died and procreating on their behalf. And lastly, point of reference, tithe and offerings as based on land ownership. How do we reconciliate? How do we reconcile the practices which the Bible states, but Eurocentric culture says these are evil? But by saying they are evil African practices, they actually are not aware that these are biblical practices. Question. With a K. K-W-E. Question.
Oh, you're done, sir? Let it be on record, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus has never been a white man. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. And the message of the kingdom of God has never been Eurocentric What the Europeans did is take the message and package it with their Eurocentricity because they had one agenda: to take over the resources and the people of Africa. So they messed us up in a major way. And then number two, they educated us. What kind of education? It was designed to create slaves. So they made sure we forgot our culture. They demonized our culture. You see, and that's not what the kingdom of God is about. You don't demonize the culture except for components that are demonic. And I've said already, I mean, the elder has elaborated. Christmas, Passover, not Passover, Easter, I mean, those things have nothing to do with Christianity. I mean, I can even drop even more major bombs which have nothing to do with Christianity. But the point is made that indeed this syncretistic, culturally biased message has brought great harm. It must be gotten rid of. And then they also did what? They also made sure they enslaved us mentally with, sorry to bring this in, I don't like to bring it in, but it cannot be avoided, white supremacy. They demonized and made being black evil. They did it subliminally with the paintings, with the pictures. That's why they made Jesus a white guy. And that Jesus guy you see is not even Jesus. It's a model from the 15th century who was an illegitimate son of one of the popes. They made that guy the Jesus guy. And that's the guy we all see when we close our eyes, because they did a great job of messing us up mentally. But thank God that Africans are waking up. Okay? The difference between my elder and myself is that I am waking up but still hooked to the to the God that created the heavens and the earth and made his identity known through this book called the Scriptures, we commonly call the Bible. He made himself known, and then he revealed himself to me. I met him personally. So the difference with me is I had an encounter with this God. It's not something I read in a book and somebody explained to me nicely and I understood. My background is the occult. My background is I'm an agnostic. I question everything. That's why I'm who I am. I don't take anything at face value. I will question it to check its veracity and its genuineness. And so in so doing, I came to know, well, by the way, he made himself known to me. So it wasn't something that I did because I definitely wasn't ever going to receive him. So when he made himself known to me, he began to reveal his truth through that same Bible. And I have come to know him in a deep and powerful way. And there are many testimonies that I've been able to see in his name in my life, including people coming back to life, diseases being healed. The list is endless. I know this man called Jesus Christ. And so today, let's get rid of this Eurocentric view, which is messing us up even today. And that's why Africans are still not awakened. So on this one, I agree with the elder. That's why, you see, and I have to hurry up and close, but that's why I even do these debates with the elder, because I'm a Pan-Africanist. And I believe in the true liberation of Africans, that the misidentity and the miseducation and the misplacement must go. And we must remember the African who was dismembered by culture. Because when these Muzungus came, sorry we keep referring to them, we are all brothers in Christ, I agree. But let's talk about the historical injustices. You cannot deal with the current situation without addressing historical injustices and the problem. This is what we call diagnosis in medicine. You cannot solve a problem without diagnosing correctly the problem. And diagnosing requires investigative research. And we know for a fact that when the Muzungus came, we have letters from kings like King Leopold. We have papal bulls from the various popes, which were very categorical about making sure you suppress these people by all means necessary. And so the idea of teaching a pie in the sky was a deliberate strategy which is completely anti-kingdom to suppress people. So we have to understand that, sir. And we must separate that idea of the kingdom in heaven, you eat in heaven when you die, because that completely violates so many things that Scripture teaches, both in the Old Testament and New Testament, about occupying. And I love Jesus' statement, occupy until I come. That word means what? Do business until I return. Each is given talents and gifts. Do business in extending the imminence of the kingdom. The imminence of the kingdom. It will come one day. It's not here, but we'll do our best as representatives, as ambassadors, to demonstrate the kingdom in the truest sense of the word. That was a disservice from those missionaries. They did horrible things. And
All right, so there we are. So Reverend Watermambazi points out the fact that the packaging of this messaging or the message of the gospel was done with evil intentions. So, and this is something that I'm beginning to actually say more boldly. Initially, I was scared to say it, because when you attack the Bible, people become sensitive. It just creates this animosity where people start. You really want to avoid the backlash. But I really believe that in the times that we're in, with the changes that are happening, with the winds of change that I've been talking about, you've heard me say that quite a few times, winds of change happening, especially around Africa, we need to take a look at the packaging of the gospel. The gospel brings God to us, tells us about God, teaches us a lot of things about spirituality, holiness, and things like that. But there's a problem with the Bible. There is a problem with the Bible, and this is a conversation we must now have openly. And I'm looking forward to a time in life where we'll get scholars begin to look at some of these aspects of the Bible that look dubious and confusing and kind of put them in the right perspective, because the packaging of this message was done with evil intentions. All right. And that's why quite a number of people get confused about what it's saying. All right. Another thing that he pointed out is, which I know I did a video on some 3 weeks ago or so, is education. That when Europeans came to Africa, white people actually, to be precise, all right, they educated Africans, all right? They educated them in such a way that they would be colonizable and enslavable, all right? So that they could easily enslave them, all right? And there's a whole lot that we can say there about the education system. I'm actually preparing to do a series on how the education system has ravaged communities such as Africa. It's done the same thing in other places, but my interest is Africa for this particular time. I want to start this war of healing, or journey of healing and repair from my own homeland before I can spread out. So I'm planning to actually do a series on what education has done, and I'm relying on resources such as this great book by which I've talked about before, by what's his name, Walter Rodney, which is how Europe underdeveloped Africa. He says some really powerful things on what education did and how the Europeans managed to achieve what they achieved in terms of the destruction of Africa. He also pointed out how that religion has demonized African cultures. And this is something that I would like to really hammer on. Because I grew up in an environment where we constantly heard religious messages from Christians and spiritual leaders, pastors, apostles, prophets, criticizing the African cultures. For some reason, these white people were able to convince Africans through Christianity, by Christianizing Africans, they were able to convince them that everything African is demonic. And so we've heard quite a lot of messaging that targets Christian norms. African cultural norms as being demonic. It even went to as far as to condemn secular music in Africa, where anything that doesn't say Jesus or God, we look at it as demonic. And yet that's not the case, because the case of gospel music is a new genre. And now with all of these things that are coming out, these revelations, you can now begin to think that even the genre of gospel music must have been brought to re-emphasize this thing, that everything else outside of this is demonic, throw it away. And that has gone a long way to hamper development. And in the future, we can look at the nitty-gritties of the effects of these things. But all in all, the criticism of this, or demonizing of African cultures, is really ridiculous. And I grew up when I was young, I listened to these messages and I believed it was the gospel truth. Now we are seeing that this is not true at all. It's all part of the plan of white people having come and sent this trend of demonizing everything that was African to destroy the identity. I believe the Reverend Watermambas there touched on the identity. He used the word misidentity through miseducation. I forget the other thing that he mentioned there. But he also mentioned events such as Christmas, Easter, white wedding, all of these things not being biblical. They are white culture. So essentially, through Christianity, white people were able to bring their culture into the African culture to make it easy to manage the African people. That's what happened through this Christianity. And so that's why it needs a revision or even just getting rid of it altogether. I know this is going to be something that people will resist with their life. And the reason for that is because we have grown up in it. There are people who were born in it and died in it, and then they handed it over to the next generation. So it's going to be a really, really, really tough fight. Some people are simply going to say, no, we're not doing that. But the reasons are straightforward. The reasons are straightforward. All right. Also, he touched on white supremacy. How that we were even given a white Jesus. People have portraits of this white Jesus, who is actually a model, is an illegitimate son of a pope. And this is the person who was made a model, and he became the symbol of Jesus Christ. And this is the person that people have put in their houses. One other thing I want to add is this. You know, when you think about what the Catholic Church did in Africa, and this I find really amazing and I find it uncomfortable. It doesn't sit well with me. The things that the Catholic Church did in Africa, if they did even just 10% of that in a country like America, today as we speak, there's not a single person who would step his foot into that church. There isn't. For the Africans think this is the right way to go. They've given you the wrong image of Jesus or God, and then they did all this destruction by sending false missionaries who were false prophets, and then doing all this destruction, taking minerals, enslaving the people, colonizing, and people still go to that church. That was done in Europe. There's not a single person in Europe who would step into that church. There isn't. Why in Africa is the opposite, I don't know. We can have another conversation about that. But that's something, again, that Reverend touched on. He also made it clear we need to get rid of this Eurocentric gospel, the Christianity. And he's absolutely right. And I second him, because this has been in my thinking for quite a while now. That if we really are going to develop our country, and I'm going to show you later on as I continue to speak how this touches on development for the continent of Africa or our communities. All right? So it makes it clear we need to get rid of this Eurocentric gospel. The Christianity, we need to get rid of it, because it provided a misidentification, a misidentity. It replaced the identity of the African people. That's what it did. And that's part of the problem of the poverty and many other problems that have besieged the African continent, and today they're still ongoing. All right? And then here's another important piece, and this is one that I want to make really a major talking point. He says you cannot cure without diagnosis. All right? And I like to put it this way. I've had conversations with friends about this. I've had friends who've told me, I don't know why you keep talking about racism. We shouldn't even be talking about this. It's the past. We should just look forward on how we can develop ourselves, how we can improve ourselves, what we can do with what we have, and so on. And one day I told some of these friends of mine, I said, you know what? You guys forget. You are the kind of people who, when you go to a doctor, you just want him to give you the medicine. You don't want him to ask you questions. When did it start? Because sometimes doctors or medical personnel or medical professionals, when you have a condition, they'll even do an investigation into the history of your family. They will ask you about your grandfather, your great-grandfather, because some of these things, they go further than just your generation. So they will do an investigation to be able to give you a cure, or to be able to cure your ailment or disease. And so I told my friends, I said, you're the kind of people who go before a doctor and you don't want all those questions. You don't want to know the history of the disease. You don't know you don't want to know how it originated. You just want the cure. And I kind of feel lately that this is what the church keeps wanting to do. They don't want to give the people a diagnosis, a very helpful diagnosis, to give them the history of how their problems started, where they came from. Because the things that we're dealing with, they are mostly physical. A lot of the problem have nothing to do with demons or the devil or spirituality. Nothing. It's all just physical conditions that have come from all this manipulation that Africa has suffered in the last centuries. But the pastors today, the religious leaders, they want to give people a cure without diagnosis. They are not diagnosing the problem. And this is part of the problem of religion. And the reason there isn't this diagnosis is because we're still trying to promote this Christianity. The same Christianity that has disconnected us from our history, from understanding who we are, understanding how we got into all of these problems. There's a laziness to be able to teach effectively, take through people through the transitions that have happened in the past to bring us to the place where we are. So that now when you talk about what the cure is or what the solution is, people have a full understanding of the importance of the steps that they must take to get themselves out of the problems that they're in. So there's a quick fix where we just tell people, give tithe and offering and God will bless you. We think that the cure is just to preach some powerful sermon about Elijah, how Elijah ascended into the heavens, and then they give offering and tithe, and we tell them God is going to bless them. Which reminds me, I've got quite a number of friends now. We've been having healthy debate about religion, and a number of them told me, initially I was resistant, but a number of them told me there is no blessing of God that is not attached to the land. And I was resistant to that, but now I see the point and I agree 100%. If our religious leaders cannot lead the people to possess the lands that they are on, or at least to have some piece of land that they can cultivate, that they can build their houses on, and even be able to grow some kind of business, I don't see how they are blessed. I don't see how. Because even when we talk about the blessing of Abraham, Abraham's blessing was land. Because every blessing that we are looking for is in the land. The minerals are in the land. The minerals that and the materials that Solomon used to build the temple, it was the land. So without land, the people are nothing. And so the words of Jomo Kenyatta, when he says that when white people came, they taught us how to pray with our eyes closed. And when we opened our eyes, they had the land and we had the Bible. That's a very, very important saying here. Because we see a perpetuation of that, and Reverend Waterman-Bassey touched on that religion is perpetuating these problems. It's perpetuating this slave mentality, the Egyptian mentality. It's perpetuating it. We don't have time here to break down how Christianity or these religious messages or spiritual messages are perpetuating that. By continuing to tell people that your problems are spiritual, it's the devil. This is exactly what these white Europeans and white missionaries came and did. They made Africans believe every problem they had was the devil. And yet the problem was them. And that's why I keep talking about racism. Because at the end of the day, the agenda was a racial agenda. To overcome and destroy this race. So that through white supremacy, they could reign and control the whole world. And today they control the world. Through this deception. Some people think there's a deception that is coming. The Bible has been talking about deception in the future. There will be a deception. The deception already happened. The deception already happened. Africa, God's people, they were taken into deception, miseducated, given a misidentity, the identity taken away from them. And since that time, we've been living in this deception. We don't know who we are. Everything we say has been a deception. Everything we understand about ourselves has been a deception. The deception already happened. The deception already happened. And now, with the awakening that is happening, many Africans and even outside of Africa, awakening to what the truth is, we are now being taken out of the deception. The deception already happened. These people who deceived Africa, the white people, they've been ruling now almost 1,000 years. And the Bible talks about the 1,000 rule. It talks about it. They've been in charge and ruling the earth and the whole world for centuries now. Okay, but I didn't want to get into that. Let me carry on with this particular presentation today regarding what was said by these two figures here, because I respect what they said and I'm using those as a reference point. And then the other thing that he said, that Reverend Waterman-Bassey said there, which again is very, very powerful, again in emphasizing that religion is not helping. He talked about how education was designed to enslave. So he ended up by saying Christianity is a culture. It's a culture. It's white culture. And so through this Christianity, Africans have been trying to be like white people, behaving like white people. And that's what has taken away the identity of the African people. And when you don't know who you are, I don't know if there's anything else you can do that will be successful. If you don't know who you are. And that's why Jacob was asked by God, who are you? What is your name? Who are you? Because when you are dealing with God and you want God to walk with you, you have a covenant with him, you want him to bring you to a particular place, help you develop yourself, help you develop your land, you have to know who you are. You have to know who you are. So he ends by saying, discard it. He agrees with Joshua Mapongo, because Joshua Mapongo has been an advocate. We need to discard Christianity. And the Reverend Walter Mambazi there agrees with him. And guess what? I too agree with the idea that we must discard Christianity. I don't know if in this short time I've not shown you, at least given you an idea of how destructive Christianity has been. Then I'm not sure how else. Even though in future I'll be talking more and more and more about what Christianity has done. And then also, please understand, I think I said this earlier on, maybe I forgot to say it, but I think I must have mentioned it earlier on. To tell people to discard Christianity, discard the Eurocentric gospel, is not the same thing as telling people to abandon God. Nobody is telling people to stop praying or stop believing in God. People in Africa, Africans, believed in God before white people showed up. They had these scriptures before white people came. But white people came and misrepresented these scriptures, misconstrued, changed things here and there, and compiled a Bible that they had tampered with, made changes to distort the message to the believers, to those who believe in God. And that's why in our search for truth, going back to what were the original words of this Bible, we have to begin by discarding the Eurocentric version of the gospel, which is Christianity. So this is not to say people must no longer believe in God. No. This is not to say people must walk away from God, have nothing to do with God. That's not what this is. If anything, this kind of conversation, when properly handled and understood correctly, it makes people even stronger in God. And that's what I hope to achieve. And that's why even when I started to kind of have these ideas and have this conviction, I was really thinking twice. Because at some point I was thinking, maybe I'm going to destroy people's faith in God. Maybe I'm going to discourage people from believing in God. But I realized, no. If anything, correcting this error is going to strengthen people in their God. And I believe that's what the outcome should be. All right? So we'll talk much more. There's really a lot to say to this. But in a nutshell, that's what I can say. We need to talk a lot more about what education has done and how we can restructure our own education systems in Africa to be able to develop. And also, as I end, one of the points that I forgot to mention here is this, and I need to echo this, is that I believe that spiritual leaders, or in this case we can use the word religion, religious leaders, because that's what it's been until we correct it, right? So religious leaders, spiritual leaders, pastors, prophets, apostles, I believe that they are supposed to be a very important tool in the development of a nation, in the development of the land, Africa as a whole. Because they're supposed to be able to help people inhabit the land, possess the land, not in the spiritual, in the physical. They're supposed to be helping people understand the importance of having the land, the importance of making use of the land. Hence the scripture, occupy until I come. It's not occupy in the spiritual zone or in the spiritual realm that we don't even fully understand. It's the occupation of the physical land, exploiting the land with the gifts and talents. That's what ministers of the gospel are supposed to be helping people understand. The value of the land. The value of land. As we speak, because Christianity has gotten people to a place where they don't understand the value of land. They don't understand that the blessing of God is land. They've abandoned the land. They don't know what to do with the land. They have no idea because they've been convinced that the kingdom is coming. Prepare yourself for the kingdom. Focus on the kingdom of God. Don't love earthly things. But the people who brought that kind of message, they love the earthly things. And when you abandon your earthly things, they come and take them from you because that's the goal that they have. Their goal is to get you to release to them the things that you own, the land that you own that has the minerals. And so when ministers of the gospel keep preaching this gospel about some heavenly place that you must focus on and forget about the land, they are making the slave mentality worse. They are enshrining that slave mentality even further into the minds of the people. The church is supposed to help people become producers, not consumers. Help people produce from the land and empower themselves. That's what development is. So the ministers of the gospel are supposed to be very helpful in raising such leaders who go into positions of government and are able to help people own the land and use the land to develop the country. That's in a nutshell. Now, in the future, we'll go into details in terms of how do we structure these things, what structure is needed to be able to accomplish this task. But for now, that's in a nutshell. All right? So let me hear what you think. I think this is a very, very important conversation to have. It's really complex because of where we've been and how lost we've been. So it's complex. But we'll get there as long as we keep talking. Let me know what you think and how you feel. And then we'll keep talking. I thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one. Bye-bye.